Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mang, and welcome back to Mangging. The title of this video is probably going to give something away. Long story short, actually, no, I'm probably going to tell the story, so that's not going to, whatever. Okay, so the D&D 4th edition Adrift Tides of Chaos campaign has come to a close. And I think that's kind of evident. I've already talked about this in today's Hanging with Mang, but some people don't watch that or whatever. So, so it's come to a close. Basically due to a multitude of extenuating circumstances regarding people dropping out of the campaign or losing interest in the campaign and so on and so forth. It kind of culminated today with Charlie Chalk saying that he was dropping out of the campaign because D&D just didn't really interest him. He's never played D&D before, and it just didn't really, he thought it was kind of bland and so on and so forth, which is fine. I guess that's how it is. And then earlier in the week, the player who was playing Goomeric, the robot butler, had also dropped out of the campaign because he preferred to play around a real table instead of online. So that all kind of led to, especially with today's from Charlie Chalk saying he was dropping out, that Ziggy was like, okay, well, I guess we'll probably just switch to a different system then. Because if we switch, we can at least keep hold of Charlie Chalk, and we have some semblance of a group. There are other situations. There are other problems with the campaign, like the fact that we were separated and there wasn't really a clear way of bringing us back together. It just didn't really work. So Ziggy decided to switch, and I gave him his options of what we could play, and he settled on Shadowrun. And so in this video, I'm going to talk quite a bit about Shadowrun. And so tonight, instead of playing a session, because Ziggy, he just had no time to prepare a session of Shadowrun, even if he did have time, we spent about 3 hours or so, probably a little longer than 3 hours, building our characters. And, okay, so I think most people are kind of clear on what Shadowrun is. But I always like to give refreshers, and I like to just talk about things. So I will refresh people's memories on what Shadowrun is. Shadowrun is a role-playing system that has been around for quite some time. The system that we are playing is 5th edition, which came out a few years back. But the system itself, I think, goes back to, I don't know, 80s, I want to say. I can probably get an exact time for you, an exact date. 1989 was when it was first published. Okay. And so Shadowrun is kind of, I guess it would probably be pretty easy to say it's the #1 cyberpunk role-playing game. I think that would probably be pretty safe to say, because there aren't too many. I think the other big one is Cyberpunk 2020, or just Cyberpunk it's called. But Shadowrun, I think, is more well known. There's been games based on it, and card games, and all sorts of stuff. Okay, and so Shadowrun, okay, I guess there's an important distinction between Cyberpunk and Shadowrun. Cyberpunk, or at least Cyberpunk 2020, whatever. It's basically just cyberpunk. And what is cyberpunk? Cyberpunk is basically take like a snapshot of the 80s and the 80s pop culture and just put it into the future. So it has crazy technology and cyber technology and augmentation and, Deus Ex kind of shit, but it has an 80s punk culture veneer just slapped all across it. That's kind of what cyberpunk is. And so Cyberpunk 2020, especially the kind of earlier versions, really kind of embraced that rock punk kind of culture where everybody had crazy mohawks and there was leather and spikes, all that kind of over the place. So that's what that kind of focused on. Shadowrun tones that down a little bit, and they add in magic. And so the story of Shadowrun, the Shadowrun universe, is that at some point in the 21st century, there was an event. I think it was called the Awakening. And it basically caused magic to enter into our world. And there was a phenomenon because of that called the unexplained genetic expression, I guess. And it caused humans to give birth to non-humans, such as elves and dwarves, and some humans turn into orcs and even trolls. And then also there was a virus called the Metahuman Vampiric virus, which is not a very good name at all. I don't think anyone official named that. And this caused humans to change into even more messed up shit. And so this includes vampires and goblins and ghouls and all sorts of traditional kind of fantasy elements. And then on top of that, because of the Awakening, dragons entered into our world. And dragons are just exactly what you would think of as far as Dungeons and Dragons, except they've adapted kind of to our world. And so they'll take the form of normal businessmen, except they rule kind of, mega corporations and things like that. And they're supremely powerful and blah, blah, blah. And so that's the kind of world that Shadowrun exists in, is you have all the cyberpunk, and technology is a massive part of what Shadowrun is, and it's my favorite part of what Shadowrun is. It takes place, at least the 5th edition takes place in 2075, 2077, 2070s, 2077, yes. And so, yeah, augmented reality, virtual reality, the Matrix, like it's a big, and when I say Matrix, I don't mean like Keanu Reeves. I mean basically their version of the internet. Although it's more than that. Like technology is very involved in the Shadowrun setting. I'm reiterating a lot of stuff I've said in the past, but some people have just not heard it before. Like, basically, if you look at how life is today for our technology compared to life in, like, the 50s, you can imagine how life would be in 2077. Like, there's that kind of just jump, there's that kind of progression. Like, we think of our technology today as just revolutionary and just insane, and, like, look at how connected we are. And it's just like, that's a joke compared to how technology is in 2077, or at least as Shadowrun depicts it. Like, I think, like, nowadays we're kind of, I don't know, like, I may be mixing my knowledge of Shadowrun with real-world knowledge, but, like, nowadays, like, you have, like, a smart home. Like, we call them smart homes if you can control, like, the lighting and the heating remotely. Like, if you're sitting on your couch, you can turn on the lights in your bedroom. We call that having a smart home. Like, in Shadowrun, like, you can do every single function of your home from the office. Like, and that's not even, like, a great example, because I'm sure there are people nowadays that could do something like that. But, like, everything is connected. Like, everything has chips in it. Everything has, like, RFID tags in it, and everything is wirelessly connected, and it's ridiculous is what it is. And so, I mean, that's the technology part of Shadowrun. And so the Matrix, the internet, whatever it is like, nowadays you go on the internet and you go to a web page for a restaurant. And you go to that webpage, and you just see like their menu and their business hours, and you see some pictures and so on and so forth. With the Matrix in something like Shadowrun, you basically go on you log into the Matrix, you go to this restaurant's host page or host site or whatever, and you can basically virtually walk around the restaurant. And you can even maybe like it gets really intense. So maybe you'll see other people that are logged into the site. This is probably more relevant for something like a nightclub. But you see other people that are logged into the site, the page, whatever I think it's site. I think they still use the word site for the nightclub, and they're around there, and they could virtually dance. And there are modules that you can have installed, and you can be all hooked up that you actually feel like you're dancing, and you control your own movements. And then you go up to the bar of the nightclub and you order a drink, and the money's just deducted from your account. And because you have these sim modules installed, you actually get to taste whatever this drink is called virtually, because it's all just chemical reactions in your brain that the sim module kind of stimulates. And that's kind of how it is. It's all it's next level shit, man. Now, older editions of Shadowrun didn't have, like, wireless wasn't really a thing. Like, they never really thought about it. And so everything had to be directly hacked into. Like, you actually had to plug cables into the mainframe if you wanted to hack it. Nowadays, like, we know that wireless technology is not going away by the 2077. It's staying around. It's very handy. So everything can kind of be wirelessly hacked. And so corporations kind of have to work around that by having everything as closed loop systems and blah blah blah. It's all very fascinating. So anyways, technology, very cool. We'll talk about more of that later. The other side then is how magic affects things. There are still, of course, humans. I think they're still kind of the majority group, I guess, amongst Shadowrun, like amongst residents. A lot of humans, but then there are also elves around, and there are dwarves around, and there are orcs around. So you might go to a hotel, and there's an orc just sitting there, things like that. There are trolls, although not really that many, and they're kind of frowned upon. And so there is kind of this racial tension a little bit, because it's not really that far off from fantasy tropes. Elves and dwarves don't really like each other. Why? Because it's just kind of how it is. Humans don't like, well, basically everybody, it's not unexpected to have a human that just hates all the other metahumans. And then there are, I hate to use the word wizards, because I don't know what they call them. Let me actually find out what they call them. Magicians, but that sounds so lame. Yeah, I mean, I guess mage wouldn't be... There are mages. So there are mages, because magic has kind of influenced this world and influences people. So you have characters that will be able to cast spells. Much akin to something like Dungeons and Dragons. You'll have characters that will be able to throw fireballs and shit like that. And, what else will they be able to do? They'll be able to detect individuals magically. They'll be able to cure diseases. Prophylaxis. Okay. Like there's a lot of pages. They can turn invisible. They can cause mass agony, which sounds crazy. Phantasms. Mob control, ice sheet, levitation, like all kind of really mostly traditional magic stuff, and then that they're just wandering around in this ultra technological world, which is interesting, except I could do without it. And I'll talk about more why I could do without it later, but I'll probably never play a mage in Shadowrun because I like the technological aspects so much. So along with magicians, or mages, I guess, there's also, there's shamans, and shamans are a bit more, they're a bit more in tune with, you think of a shaman, they're a bit more in tune with the nature of things, and so they deal a bit more with the spirits, And I don't really have, I can't really discuss this on the same level as like a really big fanatic fan of Shadowrun because I don't know a whole lot about it. But I mean, there are spirits in the sense of something like a ghost, but then there are also like wild spirits. And so wild spirits can represent like elements, I guess. And they're a lot more dangerous. They're not really sentient, I guess. They're a bit more untamed, as the name would suggest. And so the shamans kind of have links with them. But again, I don't know if I'll ever play in a Shadowrun game where I see a shaman. And then the third type of kind of magic character is an adept. And what an adept is basically like an... Well, no, that would be... I wanted to say like an agent from the Matrix. But that's really like... Not like their kind of skill set, not the fact that they're programs in like a virtual reality. I mean like the fact that they can punch through walls and they can run alongside walls and dodge bullets and things like that. Which might lead you to believe that, well, like, why would anybody not play an adept? That sounds badass as hell. Which, yeah, I mean, it kind of is. There are downsides to being adept. You basically have to invest in being like a magic type of character, but you don't really get any spells. You just get power points that you use to do these kind of crazy things. And so you're pretty much investing in that aspect. So you don't really get the benefit of other areas. But yeah, they are really badass. So they basically use magic to augment their physical abilities in ways that normal humans or whatever, normal people would be unable to. I'm trying to look up kind of an example from this book. Here, missile parry. You can catch slow-moving projectiles such as arrows, thrown knives, grenades, or shuriken out of the air. So that's pretty good. Killing hands. This power lets you inflict lethal damage with your unarmed attacks. Wall running. You can run up sheer walls or other vertical surfaces a limited distance. And so, I mean, none of them really make you, like, godly. Because that would be ridiculous. They just kind of improve you in ways that some people would use cybernetics or something like that. You just kind of use magic, and so it's a bit more mystical. You can easily run Shadowrun without doing any sort of adept stuff, but it's an option to use magic without casting fireballs or something like that. Okay, so the other kind of weird characters are a Technomancer. And a Technomancer, they're kind of like the magical side of hacking. Trying to get a good description of them. Here, Technomancers are metahumans with the mysterious, if not mystical, ability to connect to and manipulate the Matrix without the aid of technology. They not only have the seemingly supernatural aptitude, but they have the ability to do things that no computer can do or should be able to do. Scientists and magical researchers haven't figured out what makes a Technomancer tick, but they agree that it isn't science or magic. As you'd expect, this makes a lot of people very nervous around Technomancers. So yeah, it's... They're kind of... So they're akin to hackers, but they basically like can see all the technology in like their freaking brain. It's kind of like again comparing it to the Matrix, and this isn't a great example, but I'm gonna do it. Like in the Matrix, when you get to see like the console, that like I don't even know what they call them. The guy is sitting at, where you just see the lines of Matrix code running down the screens, and it's just like green code just sliding down. And to you, it just looks like complete gibberish, but them, they understand it completely, and they can read it just like they're watching a video. That's kind of how it is, I guess, for a Technomancer. Again, that's not a great example, but they can connect with technology on a level that is just impossible, basically. And so most hackers use cyber decks. They use basically like tablets, or they use computers to hack into computers. Technomancers use themselves to hack into computers. I don't really get it. I don't really care for it because I like the whole grounded kind of hacking technology kind of thing. So I'll never play a Technomancer, but there you go. And then finally you have a rigger, which is, they're akin to hackers. They're akin to deckers. But they're really they control more, like they're to vehicles and drones what deckers are to computers and devices. So the rigger is in charge of like remotely controlling vehicles and driving and sending out drones and robots and things like that. So yeah, so you have all that kind of stuff. You have the deckers, which just are your hackers, and then you have everybody else who basically just shoots a lot of guns. You also have the street samurai, which are generally equipped with like a katana, which is, I don't know how that came about, but yeah, the street samurai. Where was I? I kind of got off on a tangent, I feel. Okay, so yeah, so there's the magic aspect, which is there. Like most people living on the just everyday life, they'll never encounter magic. They don't really care about it. They like, if they did, they'd be probably terrified of it, so they don't really worry about it. Technology kind of really runs their lives. And so in that sense, running the whole world, more or less, are 10 mega corporations. It basically boils down to just 10 companies that rule the planet because they're so massive. There's really no government or anything like that. There's just the corporations. And I don't remember, I read a statistic somewhere, but it was like 90% of the population works for these corporations or something ridiculous like that. I don't know where I'm going to find that statistic again, and I probably won't. But just, yeah, many people work for these corporations. And they're not really good. Like, just picture something like Walmart and just blow it up to 100 times that scale and make 10 of them. And so they employ most of the people, and what they do is they basically have these like arcologies. So they have these people, and this isn't for every corporate employee or anything like that, but a large amount of them. They have these structures called arcologies, which apparently somebody wants to build today in our world. Somebody wants to build one of these arcologies, but it's basically like a self-contained town. Like, it's a self-contained living area in one huge building, generally like underground. And people, like these employees, live there, they sleep there, they eat there, they go to movies or whatever. They live out their lives in this arcology, which is also where they work. And so, like, they're basically slaves, more or less, because the corporation, of course, pays these people. But what they'll do is they'll like deduct living costs and things like that from their pay, and like food costs and stuff like that, especially if they have a family and stuff. They'll deduct that from them, and then they'll like pay them in like currency that's useful only at this arcology. So it's like basically like gift cards for the Ares arcology, grocery store and movie theater and things like that. And so they really don't have any money. They just, everything is about this. And so that's what these corporations do. They basically own these people 100%. And it's very difficult to get out of one of these corporations. Nigh impossible. And, yeah, so not everybody works for these corporations, because some people run shops and are street doctors and things like that. But they generally live in squalor. If you're not a part of one of the mega corporations, you're generally not living a great life, unless you are a Shadowrunner. And that's what we're here to talk about. So a Shadowrunner, well, here, it says right at the front of the Shadowrun 5th edition book, Shadowrun, noun, any movement, action, or series of such made in carrying out plans which are illegal or quasi-legal. So a Shadowrunner is basically a criminal, which is a very important distinction to make when playing Shadowrun, is you're not automatically expected to be the good guy, because you are pretty much by definition a criminal. You're going to be doing criminal activities. Now, remember I said there wasn't really any government. Everything is the corporations. So legality is a fuzzy thing in Shadowrun. Especially since generally most of the time who you're going to be hired by is one of these corporations. And what they're going to hire you to do is screw over another corporation. And so really, the only law are the corporations, and they're hiring you to do illegal stuff. And I put that in quotation marks. So it's all kind of fuzzy. Technically, sure, you're a criminal. You're probably going to be doing bad things. And bad things include breaking and entering, hacking, cracking, armed robbery, mugging, kidnapping, and, of course, murder. And you're doing this generally for the sole purpose of amassing money. Now, this is all just kind of the standard stuff. You can go off of that standard in different ways. You could be playing a very kind of honorable Shadowrun campaign where you're trying to bring down the corporations and bring it back to the way things used to be, and, you know, take down this global nonsense and all that. This will never happen, but that would be one campaign where you're kind of on a crusade for justice and, you know, freedom and all that. It's possible. On the other hand, you could just be all bloodthirsty maniacs out for killing and mayhem and all sorts of stuff like that. So yes, like generally, because most sensible people don't really do that. And I mean that in the way that most people playing an RPG don't go on doing wanton acts of mayhem just for a whole campaign. Like, it just doesn't happen. Most people are I guess I don't say this really lightly. Most people are generally good people, even when it comes to a fictional role-playing game. Like, we don't really like that. I'm sure there are groups like that that's what they do, is they just kill everything and but most people kind of keep things somewhat standard. They have morals, and they won't just really run around just killing everybody. I mean, killing will happen in groups and things like that, especially more so in something like Shadowrun, where you are playing criminals. It's kind of what you're expected to do. But yeah, most of the time, Shadowrun, you'll play kind of to a status quo where people will die, generally in self-defense. Sometimes you might just might be hired to just take somebody out or something like that. Things happen. So anyways, like I said, most of the times for Shadowrun, you're going to be hired to buy certain corporations, and they'll use what they call Mr. Johnsons. Mr. Johnsons work for the corporation, and it's kind of like there's that whole air of kind of plausible deniability, where it's like, you don't know this guy. Mr. Johnson's just what you call every one of these. They'll never call themselves Mr. Johnson. It's just kind of a Shadowrun lingo term. It's like, oh, I got another Mr. Johnson meeting or something, something like that. It's just a word for this shady individual who hires you, and he'll probably never even say he works for a certain corporation, because it's the whole plausible deniability. And so he'll hire you, he'll just give you the facts of what you're hired to do, you do the job, they pay you very anonymously, and then you may never see them again. It's just a one-time thing, because they'll just move on to a different group. Because there are a lot of Shadowrunners moving around. Because like I said, you either work for the corporations and live a shitty life, unless you're high up, which you're probably not. You work kind of not for the corporations and just kind of for yourself, or a local thing in which you're living in shitty conditions, or you're pretty much a Shadowrunner, you're a criminal. Now, there are still kind of common criminals that are just mugging on the streets and things like that. But to be a Shadowrunner, you kind of elevate yourself above that. You know, you're organized, you're trained, you're talented, you have some more equipment. Now, there are, of course, different degrees of Shadowrunners. There are the start ones that just kind of knock off small corporation warehouses and things like that, to all the way up to the top level where you're executing like CEOs and things like that. Like, you're doing huge jobs. Yeah, so that was all just kind of a summary, I guess, for those that don't know about Shadowrun. There is so much more to Shadowrun than just that quick summary, because there are a lot of different elements. It's a really big universe, and it's really all cool. So yeah, okay. So we spent the last, like I said, we spent about 3 hours making characters. And for those who remember when we played Shadowrun the last time, I played a character named Gug. And Gug was a decker. He was a dwarf decker who loved to hack shit. And I'm so, like, I think in another life I would have been a hacker of some sort if I had just invested enough time into it. I just find it so damn interesting. So I don't want to make another character. I just want to make Gug again. And so I'm going to go through kind of the character creator here. This is a character creator released for free, I guess, called Chummer 5 for 5th edition Shadowrun. And so when you make a new character, the first thing is you have to describe your priorities. And this is an interesting system in that there are 5 different categories here. There's metatype, attributes, magic of resonance, skills, and resources. And you have 5 letters, A, B, C, D, or E. And so you have to assign one of these letters to each one of these categories. You can't assign the same letter twice. And so it basically means you're going to be shitty at something, and you're going to have a lot of another thing. And so, like, resources here is your money. So you can see here, if you assign the A letter to resources, which means you can't assign A to any other category, you start with 450,000 new yen, which is quite a bit. It's not insane amounts of money, but it's quite a bit. If you assign the E letter, the lowest one, you only get 6,000. I can't imagine making a character with 6,000, and I'll tell you why later. But yeah, never do that. That would just be shit. So I think for this character, I went with B. I went with 275,000. Okay, so then metatype. This basically determines, they don't really show it here, but metatype determines what possibility of race you can be. So if you go with the lowest, you can only be human. Human or elf, human, dwarf, elf, or orc, any metatype. So you're wondering then, why are they different? If you just want to be human, why would you ever pick anything but E? Well, what it doesn't show here is basically the number of special attribute points you get. So if I go with E here, you see special attributes is 1. Whereas if I go up here, you get 7. Special attributes are edge, magic, and resonance, I think. And since I don't care about magic at all, the only relevant one is edge. And what edge is it's kind of like, it's something akin to like an action point in Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition. But not exactly. It's kind of it's one of those things that a lot of systems like to use, like a hero point or whatever like that, or an influence point, or whatever, a fate point, something like that. Edge points let you kind of add to your dice rolls, re-roll dice rolls, go first in combat. They let you do kind of different things, negate like a critical fail or whatever. So it's somewhat useful, but I didn't value it too highly, so I just went with the bare minimum to be a dwarf, C. Finally, moving on to attributes. So attributes determine these 8 attributes: body, agility, reaction, strength, charisma, intuition, logic, and willpower. And they each kind of have their own benefits, in the sense that for certain things you might add your body score to a roll, or to a dice pool. So, like, if you were trying to, like, bar a door with your body, you're trying to keep a door closed with your body, you would add your body to your strength score, and you'd roll, so 3 plus 3, you'd roll 6 dice. So there's things like that. There's things for, like, agility or reaction is used in combat, charisma, you know, it's all sorts of stuff like that. But then they also influence skills. So each skill is linked to a certain attribute, and like gymnastics or something is linked to agility. So you take your skill points that you have in gymnastics plus your agility score, and that would be how many dice you roll. So if you want to kind of be blanketly good at a certain section of skills, like I wanted to be good at all the agility skills, I would put a lot of points into agility because I would just add to all those skills. I'm pretty sure I went with 14 for this, which is lower than I wanted. But I needed a lot of money, so that was B. My magic is, of course, E, mundane, which is no magic whatsoever. You're completely non-magically gifted. You're a muggle. So that was E. This was C, so I could just be a dwarf, the bare minimum. And then it was a choice of either having more attributes or more skills, more skill points. And I'll explain the skill groups later, but you can see this directly influences how many skill points you get to go with. So it was either more attributes or more skill points. And if I went to D, I'd get 22 skill points, 0 skill groups. And I would go up to 24 attributes instead of 14. So I decided to go with 14 and 4610 for that. I think it worked out all right. I'm pretty skilled, as you'll find out. Okay, so after you do that, then you get a certain amount of primary attribute points. And so I got 14 to spend. So I increased agility up to 4. You'll notice that my body is at 3 out of 8. I didn't put any points into that. That's just how it is for being a dwarf. You get these inherent bonuses. So for being a dwarf, my body gets bumped up to 3, my my strength up to 3, my willpower up to 2. Or maybe it was up to 1. I don't remember. Yeah, so it's pretty simple. You basically just put points into things, much akin to, say, D&D. So I went with a somewhat balanced thing, but I wanted agility a bit higher because I wanted to be good at sniper rifles, and I needed my logic score to be as high as it could because that's computers. Yes. Okay. And then, and here down here is the special attributes. Like I said, I'm mundane, so I can't put anything into magic or resonance. So I just put my 1 special attribute point that I got from my priority into edge. So I have 2 edge. Not crazy, but whatever. You regain edge uncommonly. Like, it's basically if you do something very role-playing. It's when the DM feels like it, you get edge back. So anyways. So then we have qualities. And so that's something I like about Shadowrun, is it gives kind of mechanical things for role-playing traits, more or less. So some people, when they make a character in, say, D&D or something like that, they'll give their character quirks or traits or things like that. They'll say, oh, he's an alcoholic and something like that. And then they'll go through the game. And generally the people that actually say that will go through and they'll role-play being an alcoholic. And the DM, depending on how he feels, he might give certain drawbacks or whatever based on being an alcoholic. In something like Shadowrun and other systems that do this, if you pick the negative quality of being... you just pick addiction or something like that. If you pick a moderate addiction and then you say alcohol, you have a moderate addiction to alcohol, and that's part of your character, and you get -9 karma for taking that. And that's phrased weird, but it means you basically get an extra 9 karma to spend during your character creation. And that means then that I probably have... I know I have it in this book. What it means to have that. No, I'm not going to be able to find it. Because I can never find anything. Okay, addiction. A character with the addiction quality is hooked on chemical substances such as street drugs, technological magical devices, or potentially addictive activities such as gambling or sex. So then it kind of gives a chart for, well, not a chart, but it tells you like how often you have to indulge your addiction, depending on if you went with mild, moderate, severe, or burnout. And so if you took a mild addiction, which is only worth 4 karma, you'd have to do once a month you get mild cravings. And if you don't indulge it, or if you fail the withdrawal test, you get a -2 modifier to all your mental attribute-based tests. So it's really not a big deal. Like once a month, and the DM is probably going to pick the worst moment for it to come up, but you know how it is. Whereas if you pick burnout, every day they either have to do 3 doses or spend 3 hours of habit-related activity. Every day. That's where 25 karma is. So that's a huge, huge part of your character. Like, in fact, the maximum amount of negative qualities that you can take when you make a character is 25, unless your DM says otherwise. So if you took that would be like it. Like that would be your one negative quality is you're a burnout, and you're addicted to something hardcore. And so the benefit of karma, why would you take this, is you can take positive qualities. And so these do all sorts of different things. Some of them are minor, some of them are actually pretty major. Like if you take high pain tolerance, you can take more damage. If you take will to live, it's a lot harder for you to just, well, I mean, you're less resistant to just dying. Sharpshooter, quick healer, photographic memory, you know, all sorts of good things, and those cost different amounts of karma. And I only took Code Slinger, which helps me do a very specific hacking action. But for my negative actions, I took Bad Luck, which is really minor for the benefit. It's 12 karma for you, and basically, if you ever use Edge, you roll a 1d6, and if you roll a 1, like, you just spend the Edge without getting the benefit. Like, it's pretty minor, since I only have 2 edges as it is. And then I took Uncouth on Ziggy's recommendation, which is probably the reason why I went slightly over the negative quality limit, or the negative karma limit. So Uncouth basically just means anytime you're in a social situation, you're much more inclined to do something potentially insulting to whoever you're talking to. So if I was talking to the Mr. Johnson guy who's hiring us, if he says something I don't agree with, I might just flip him off. Like, I'm more inclined to do that, so I'll probably have to do like a dice roll. And that's just kind of how Gug is. That's part of the character. Okay, so moving on to skills. This is the whole skill limit for Shadowrun. It isn't massive. It's not like GURPS level or anything like that, but it's more than 4th edition D&D or something. And so, if you'll recall, I guess I can just show you again. So here for skills, since I took A, I get 46 skill points and 10 skill groups. So the 46 skill points, it's pretty obvious what that means. Is I have 46 points that I can put into any one of these things. And so if I wanted to just boost my swimming, I could put 5 points into swimming. And so then it would take the 5 from that plus your strength score, which for me is 2, or I think it's 3. Yeah, it's 3. And so I would get 8. Now, since I have 0 points in swimming, I'm defaulting on it if I ever wanted to go swimming, which means that I would take my strength score and -1 because I don't have any points in it, so I would roll 2 dice, which is what that is. So, yeah, skills, very basic. Skill groups are similar. I have 10 points for skill groups, and each of these skill groups corresponds to a group of skills. So the close combat group includes blade skill, club skill, and unarmed combat. So if I wanted to be good at all three of those skills, I could just put points individually into blades, clubs, and unarmed combat, or I could just put points into the group, and that would buff all of them equally for one low price, you know. So that's really good. And if you're planning on getting all the skills in a group, that's the way to go. The downside is that you can't buff those skills individually from that point on. So, like, I put 4 into cracking. So I get cyber combat, electronic warfare, and hacking. All good stuff for me. But if I wanted just higher cyber combat and I wanted to leave electronic warfare behind, I couldn't do that without breaking the skill group. And that's what this break is, which is not something you really want to do because it just kind of voids the investment. Overall, it's good if you're planning on investing in all those skills, which I was for electronics and cracking. It's just, I need all those skills and I want them all high, so there you go. And then I also put a point into engineering, so I'm slightly good at aeronautic mechanic, automotive mechanic, industrial mechanic, nautical mechanic. Which is basically, I just want to put points in those so I didn't default on those if I wanted to do it. Because my logic is 6. So I put 1 point into that, and suddenly I can roll 7 dice, whereas normally I would roll 5 if I ever tried it. So it was not a huge investment, but that's what it is. And then I put a point into biotech, which is biotechnology, cyber technology, first aid, and medicine. First aid and medicine, pretty obvious what they do. Biotechnology and cyber technology are for augmentations, and we'll talk about the difference between those two later. All right, so that's skills. As you can see, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm a jack of all trades somewhat, except I didn't really go into the physical stuff too much. Like I'm not good at free falling or gymnastics at all. Although if I did gymnastics, I could roll 4 dice. All right, and then there's knowledge skills, which are separate from active skills, and knowledge skills are pretty much worthless. It's like basically if you find a use during a campaign for any of your knowledge skills, you're very happy. Because knowledge skills are basically just whatever. Like you can see what I've got here. I've got cooking, French, artificial intelligence, 20th century comic books, corporate cyber networking, and corporate life. And so they kind of build a more detailed image of what your character is, what he likes, what he's learned, what he's interested in, blah, blah, blah. And so Gug, he knows how to cook. It's an interest of his. He's done that for a long time. He's studied French. Artificial intelligence he's very interested in. Comic books he likes. And you can see his professional knowledge of corporate cyber networking. So he must have been part of the corporate life at some point. And so it's just kind of thing like it's like if you ever come across something like this, you can use these roles to kind of find out some info or something like that about it, but it's highly unlikely. Languages are probably the most useful of knowledge skills, but again, when the hell am I ever going to use French? If I don't use it in my life right now, when am I ever going to use it in Shadowrun? But who knows? It's just you get free points for knowledge skills. You got to use them. Okay, so limits. Limits are basically the max number of hits of successes that you can apply to a certain test. So if I roll like 9 dice for a skill, and my mental limit for that test is 6, even if I got like 8 successes, amazingly, I can only utilize 6 of them because of this. And these are all based generally on your attributes. If you're shooting like a gun, its limit is going to be your accuracy, the accuracy of the gun. So you can only apply a certain number of hits based on the gun's accuracy. Yeah, so it's just kind of something you got to keep in mind. All right, so then let's move on to the gear, the outfitting, and we'll start with cyberware because it's very interesting. So yeah, think of this very much in the same vein as something like Deus Ex. Augmentation is everywhere. A lot of people are augmented. Some are very obvious with it. Some you will never know they're augmented. And cyberware is generally the bit more ostentatious. This is where Like I have a cyber deck implanted in my head, and if you're looking closely, you probably can tell I have a cyber deck implanted in my head. So this means a cyber deck is basically the hacking gear. Like, this is what you use to hack. You need it. So you can either just carry around kind of a tablet computer and some wires and things like that and just use that, or you can just implant it in your head and just use like augmented reality and just control it through your mental cognition, which is a lot cooler. I also have cyber ears and cyber eyes. Again, it's something like if they're scanning for it digitally, or if they're looking pretty closely, they can probably tell that you're cyber augmented. Cyber eyes are very basic. Like, a lot of Shadowrunners use cyber eyes because they're just, you kind of just put them in, you forget about it. You've got the smart link system, which hooks up with your gun, and so it augments your aiming abilities. You get vision enhancements, and so on and so forth. I also have a voice modulator installed in my voice box so that I can increase or decrease the pitch of my voice, and I can also emulate somebody else's voice if I've heard it. And I've digitally scanned it and things like that. It's all very cool shit, I know. And then, so that's cyberware, and that really, I did not go crazy with cyberware. You can go crazy with cyberware. You want a cybernetic limb that has like a rocket launcher that comes out of it? Go right ahead. You want a cybernetic torso that lets out a grappling gun? Go right ahead. You want a cybernetic penis that shoots a flamethrower? Might have to ask your DM, but there you go. There's all sorts of cyberware. Dermal plating on your chest, bone lacing, reaction enhancers, smuggling compartments, internal air tanks, all sorts of stuff. Wired reflex is basically what you want if you want to be like an agent from the Matrix. If you want to be an adept but not be magical, you get wired reflexes. You can see that it costs $39,000 for the most basic application of wired reflexes. And yeah, they can go up to 3, which costs $217,000, which is a lot of money. And the availability here that you see is 20, and it's restricted. So the number 20 means there's basically a sliding scale. I think it goes from 0 to 24, I want to say. So 0 availability, it means not what you think it means. It means that you can basically pick it up at any gas station. That's what that means. And then it goes up from there to things that you might have to special order. You might have to get it off the black market. You might have to steal it from a military industrial complex. You might have to kill some really rough people to get this shit. That's kind of how it slides up. And so that's what that number means. So you can see it starts with 8, which is not too difficult to get. You're not going to get it in an official clinic or anything like that, but you can get it. Then goes up to 12, which is like where we start at as far as Shadowrunners. This is like the top end of what we can actually get. And then 20 is just, it's pretty crazy. The R means it's restricted, which means it's not technically legal without special licensing. So if it's just a normal number like this, that means it's anybody can get it. It's not illegal, not anything, you're not licensed, whatever. If it's R, that means it's restricted and you need a license or something like that. You need paperwork. And then I don't think I'm going to be able to find it in BioWare because I don't know if there is any. Oh, here. The F. F means it's forbidden, which means that if the authorities see that on your person or you have it, you're probably getting arrested very quick. That's what forbidden means. Okay, so that's cyberware. All very cool. But on the other end of the spectrum, they have BioWare. And BioWare is much more kind of natural. Like, it's more chemically engineered to augment you. And so this is all sorts of more chemically based stuff. So you have like muscle augmentations and platelet factories and tailored pheromones and stuff like that, a tracheal filter. And then if you get cultured BioWare, this is the really expensive stuff, because this is stuff that has been specifically designed just for you. Like, this is high-end work just for your person. So you can see like synaptic boosters. The level 3 of that costs $285,000. And I know you're not really seeing what most of this does. All this has a very clear mechanical benefit, and some of it you might be able to kind of guess from just the name of it. And the book, the rule book, which I have here in front of me, details all this shit, and it's so cool. So synaptic boosters, the nerve cells making up the spinal cord are both broadened and replicated with this BioWare, allowing for more neural bandwidth. The result is a much faster reaction time. And then it goes on to tell you how it benefits you. So yeah, it's just crazy shit that just makes you more than human. And so, yeah, I mean, aside from this all being either very expensive and or very hard to get or restricted or forbidden and stuff like that, there's also the essence cost, which you see right here. Rating 3 Synaptic Booster costs 1.5 essence. And I think if I had gone to Wired Reflexes, yeah, rank 3 costs 5 essence. And how that works is basically everybody has 6 essence. Why 6? I don't know. It's just how it is. And your essence basically comprises your humanity. And I'm going to use an analogy from Spoonie. So if you're at 6, you're a normal human, just like 99% of us living today. You are 100% human. If you have 0 essence, you're basically the Terminator. You have no emotions. You don't really care for any other human. You are just mostly machine. Okay? And so it doesn't, I don't know how much it really talks about it in the 5th edition book. I'm going more off of what Spoonie has told me. In the sense that the lower essence you have, the more you're expected to kind of role play that kind of character who is more closer to the Terminator and doesn't really feel and just kills for, because he's supposed to or because he has to or whatever. Doesn't really share all the same emotions. Again, I don't know if it's really how much it's talked about in this 5th edition book. So really, essence is just kind of a limitation of how much shit you can load in. So Wire Reflexes, 5 essence. That's a lot. That's 5 out of 6. Yes, it is a lot. So I'm going to show you the final thing for BioWare and Cyberware. You see here, if you go to grade, it starts off at standard. You can also go used, and if I click on that, you see that it costs even more essence, more than you can even have. You can't get this. This is just an example. But it also reduced the cost quite a bit, down to 162,000 from 217. But then you see Alphaware, Betaware, Deltaware. This is military grade. This is like what the corporations outfit their best agents with and best soldiers. So if I go to Deltaware, you see that it cut the cost and essence cost in half down to 2.5, but it like doubled the cost. It also made the availability 28 restricted, which I'm not even sure if you could ever get without being one of the top agents for a corporation. That's an extreme example, but you see what I'm talking about. So yeah, you could get Alphaware for 22, 260, 4 essence, blah, blah, blah. So military grade increases the cost, increases the availability, reduces the essence cost. So you can fit more shit into your body. All right, moving on, because this video is running very long. So then on to the regular equipment and lifestyle stuff. So lifestyles, basically you pick how luxurious your lifestyle is. So if you live on the street, you're a hobo. You live on the street. It doesn't cost you any money per month because you are living on the street. And really, I think Charlie Chalk brought this up while we were doing this, in the fact that, what is the point? Like, why would I really care? I mean, aside from kind of a role-playing thing and sort of a character-building thing, there's not any, like, mechanical difference from living on the street to living in a high-rise penthouse. You see that the luxury costs $120,000 a month. There's not really a mechanical difference, just kind of character building. So if you don't care at all and you just want to shoot things, sure, live on the street, I guess. But I would expect a good DM to fuck with you. Yeah, if you do, if you're carrying your guns and all your shit and you're living in a box on the street, people are going to fuck with you. On the other hand, it would be very hard to find you if you're on the run, so perhaps. But I went with a middle-end comfort, no roommates, and I went with obscure, difficult to find, which cost 10% extra to the cost per month. And so I named the place Shady Hills Apartment Complex. And so it's in not a fantastic part of town. The exterior isn't wonderful, but the interior is pretty nice. And it's kind of made for people that want a good living area, but don't want people to really look twice over here, I guess. So yeah, that's a lifestyle. Not a huge deal, but there it is. Okay, armor. So armor, of course, does exactly what it does. Says what you think. It protects you against all sorts of dangerous stuff. Bullets, blades, clubbing, acid, so on and so forth. And so you see here in the regular armor section, armor clothing. It gives you 6 armor and it has capacity 6, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then there's, of course, availability number. So a chameleon suit is 10 restricted. You need a license if you're seen with that. 14 restricted. I don't know if there are any forbidden armor. Maybe, but I doubt it. Oh, no, there it is. Hardened mil-spec battle armor heavy is forbidden. So if you're seen with that, man, shit. And so yeah, there's all sorts of different armors, kind of what you want to look like. So I went with bike racing armor because Gug owns a motorcycle. He fancies himself as a bit of a biker, and he doesn't want people to really, he wants people to not ever think of him as a hacker because it works out to his benefit that way. So he looks like a biker, and this is basically kind of what I was talking about. It's very leather, spiked leather. It looks like something out of Mad Max or something. Okay. So I took that, and then I didn't really go into this yet. I forgot about this. I'll probably go into this later. There's armor modifications, and this is what the capacity is for. So the capacity of this armor is 8. And so if you go into armor mods here, you can put all these little armor mods into your shit. And so the auto injector takes up 2 slots of that 8. Chemical protection takes up 1 of that 8. And yeah, so if I wanted my bike armor to be a bit more fire resistant, it would take up 1 slot, cost me $250, done and done. I can do that right now. Done. And so my bike, if I get caught in any fire, I get an advantage. I get a bonus for defending against it because I'm wearing this special armor. And there's all sorts of stuff: gel packs, insulation, non-conductivity, radiation shielding, shock frills, so on and so forth. And so it's all really cool. Trust me, it's really cool. All right, so weapons. We got some stuff to talk about here. Okay. So I wanted Gug to be a sniper. He wasn't really a sniper at all last time. He just had a Derringer up his sleeve. But I figured if we're actually going to be doing proper jobs and I'm going to be up on a rooftop, hacking or something like that, I might as well make myself useful with a gun. And so I put a bunch of points into long arms and I bought myself an Ares Desert Strike, which is actually forbidden. I didn't know this. But this is a military weapon. I don't think all the sniper rifles are forbidden. Oh, actually, most of them are. The Pioneer 60 is not, but that's just that's for kids. The Remington, the Ruger. I mean, these are kind of old school ones. These modern ones are pretty fucking forbidden. You have the sporting rifles, which is the M1 Garand. You can still get it. All these kind of old school stuff. None of this is really forbidden, but I wanted a proper gun. So I got the Ares Desert Strike, and I outfitted this shit. This gun cost $35,000 total, which is quite a bit, as I said. It's got a shock pad to absorb some recoil, an imaging scope, of course, a tripod, a gun cam, which means that it records everything I see through my scope. And as soon as I mentioned a gun cam, everybody was like, yo, you have to get that. You have to get the gun cam. And I got it because I was like, well, what if our employer wants confirmation that I pulled the trigger on something? It's I might as well have a gun cam. Ziggy said I could open a snuff website or something like that, but I was like, that doesn't sound good at all. And then the smart gun system, which is really important for pretty much anybody that wants to do some serious shooting. The smart gun system in your gun links up with your imaging link in either your cybernetic eyes or some augmented glasses or contacts or something like that. And that basically, it helps. I want to say this cooler than I'm going to end up saying it. It augments your aiming ability. So you point the scope, you guys get what I'm saying. Like, I'm not going to be able to say this cool. I guess I should just look it up. That would be the best way to say it. We're running long on time, but I want to say this correctly. Here, smart gun system. This connects a firearm or projectile weapon directly to the user's smart link. Incorporating a small camera and laser rangefinder, the smart link keeps track of ammunition, heat buildup, and material stress. If you have a smart link, you can mentally switch between gun modes, eject a clip, and fire the gun without pulling the trigger. The camera lets you shoot around corners without exposing yourself to return fire. The system makes use of advanced calculation software, allowing for precisely calculated trajectories and high precision over any distance. Yes, that sounds a lot cooler than I was going to say. So yeah, it helps. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's like putting a smartphone in your freaking gun. Like, it just does everything for you. So you can imagine some sort of role-playing characters that would be completely against that, some kind of old-school guys. But GUG embraces technology to the fullest. So it does some mechanical benefits. It increases your accuracy and stuff like that. It helps out. And if you're wirelessly linked, which why would you not be, you also get a bonus to the dice pool when you're shooting. Because it says a wireless smart link provides a dice pool bonus to all attacks with the weapon. +1 if you're using gear with a smart link, or +2 if you're using an augmentation for which you paid essence. And since I have Cyber Eyes with the smart link system, I paid essence, I get a +2 bonus, which is pretty nice. So why would you not have wireless activated for your smart link system? Well, you might not want that, because if you do, little old hackers like Mr. Gug can wirelessly hack into your gun and cause it to, I don't know, can cause it to eject the clip if I'm being somewhat mundane. I can cause it to jam. I could cause it to, depending on how advanced the gun is, or how deep I am to your smart link system, I could cause it, like if you have cyber limbs as well, that would be huge, because then I could just cause you to point right at your buddy and shoot him in the back of the head. That would be nice. Depending on the gun, I could make it overheat and explode, you know, all sorts of things like that. So some people don't like the wireless systems because they are vulnerable to hacking, but they give such nice benefits. So yeah, of course my shit is going to be always wirelessly enabled because nobody's hacking me. Then I went with, I needed kind of a side gun, a sidearm, as they say. So I went with the Fischetti Executive Action, which is a light pistol, but it's also a machine pistol. So I got the concealed quick draw holster. If somebody jumps me on my rooftop sniping perch, bust out the machine pistol that they don't expect with the smart gun system and squeeze the trigger until they go away. Then I wanted something for the rainy days that I don't carry on me, but if I know we're going to need it, I have it. So I got the Armtech MGL-12 with the Airburst Link, 4grip, and of course the smart gun system, but an external one. And this is a grenade launcher. So I just keep this in my apartment. And I've got 4 different types of mini grenades: the flashbang, the frags, the gas, and the smoke. And so yeah, that's if we really need it. I also have a grapple gun so I can be like Batman, and a knife just in case. So that's all the weapons. Okay, gear. First off is the Cyberdeck, the most important piece of gear that I own. I can't do anything without the Cyberdeck. Fortunately, it's installed in my head, so it's not really going anywhere. Cyberdecks are insane, and cyberdecks are the reason that deckers will never pick a low amount of money to start with. Because I can show you right here. This is the cheapest cyberdeck available. The Erica MCD1 costs $49,000. It's not too hard to get, but it's fantastically expensive. Because pretty much, like, no civilian ever really buys a cyberdeck. Because there's no need. They don't hack. Like, it's like, it just doesn't happen. They like their life as it is. They have no reason to muck around and hack and get caught immediately and get arrested in horribleness. So, very expensive stuff. That's the first rating. You're going to be a real shitty decker if you buy this. This is the second one. 123,000 new yen. And this is what I got. I started with like 275,000. So this is almost like half my money just gone because of that. This is only rating 2. If I wanted the best one, 823,000 new yen. A ridiculous amount. But one day I'll get it. So there are a bunch of ones. They range. You can see down here the device rating. That's the most important thing, because that determines basically how efficient it is and how good it is, how many programs it can utilize, and its stats and stuff like that. So you see here, this one's a 1. It goes up to 6. Blah blah blah. There are different there's 2 different ones, and they kind of have different stats, but they're generally shit. This one, the micro deck's a little bit better. It costs a bit more, but blah blah blah. So I'm hoping my upgrade, I'll buy the Renraku Tsurugi, but yeah, I gotta make money to do that. And that's kind of the cool part. It's all about making money. So yeah, that was expensive. I got that installed in my head, blah, blah, blah. Next is the SIN. Your SIN is basically your identification number. This is everything. Like, anytime that you are, if you're ever taken in or ever scanned by any sort of authority, your SIN is getting scanned. It's very kind of Minority Report-esque. Shadowrunners will almost never use their real SIN because that's just a death wish. Like, if you ever leave any trace or you're scanned whatsoever, people will immediately know exactly who you are, where you live, everything, your entire history is in that SIN. So it's not a good idea. So most Shadowrunners will buy a fake SIN. And so your fake SIN is a rating of 1 to 6. And so you see here, they're all forbidden because obviously it's forbidden identification. It's illegal. So you see a rating 4 costs 10,000, a rating 6 costs 15,000. It's not ridiculously expensive, but it's generally an expense you don't really want to pay, but you need to pay. If you buy a fake SIN rating 1, it basically I need to find where it talks about this. Because it's funny. It's funny. I'm probably not going to find it. And we're running really long on time, but hopefully nobody cares. Okay. So if you have a rating 1 fake SIN, it has a random anybody, age, nationality, and sex may not match, no supporting data. So I could be like Gug. I could just be this, dwarf hacker, 26 years old, living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And my fake SIN could be of a Brazilian 64-year-old woman with 4 kids. Like, it's just like, it could be anybody. It's the worst. Like, all it will pass is like a level 1 security check, which all that checks is if you have a SIN. If you have a SIN, you pass. If you don't have a SIN, you fail. If it's the next level check and you have a rating 1 SIN, you're failing because it's just complete bullshit. So moving on, a rating 2. Generally things are pretty close to what you are as far as the big broad spectrum, but it's still not very good. 3 is a good match. Your sex, age, and nationality are going to match. There is some supporting data, but it's all very obviously fake if anybody looks into it. 4 is casually plausible. So this is kind of thing that if somebody just kind of glances at it, as far as kind of digitally glances at it, it'll all look okay. They'll probably pass you. But if there's any kind of major look into it, it's going to be fake. So that's what Gug has. Like I said, I probably could spend more money. I think I can afford a rating 6. And a rating 6 is basically everything matches. Like, this is a perfect copy. Like, you'd have to go to like the penthouse, like the top level of a corporation for somebody to detect that it's not real. But if you're at that point, they probably already know it's not real. So yeah, it's not a huge investment, and it's probably pretty useful. So there you go. Now, keep in mind, though, the highest that we can get as a starting character is 12 for availability. So I cannot go up because 12 is the highest it goes. Okay, moving on. Det Cord, one of my favorite things ever. Like, when I was first looking into Shadowrun last time we played, I found out about Det Cord, and I fell in love with it because it's the coolest damn thing ever. It's basically just a cord. It is like a length of cord that is filled with low-yield explosives. And so you can use it with other explosives as kind of like as what it says, a detonating cord. And you don't just like light one end with a lighter. It's a bit more involved than that. But you can use it to basically link together explosives. So det cord like ignites like it's instantly. So if you need like 4 different explosives like across a building to explode pretty much simultaneously, you just link them together with det cord. So you can use it like that. You can also use it on its own, and you use it as what they call a cutting charge. Where basically you need to explosively disconnect 2 different things. You use det cord. You just wrap the det cord around it. You blow it up, and they're going to be separated because it's basically a very tightly controlled charge. So many uses for det cords, because it's really not. It's easily concealed because it just kind of looks like rope. Well, it doesn't look like rope, but it looks like cabling. You can carry it around. It doesn't look like plastic explosives. And I can do a lot of things with it. I mean, you could kill people with it. In fact, I used it on Bob in the other Shadowrun campaign. But yeah, det cord, really cool. We got armor-piercing round for the sniper rifle, which is the highest availability that I can get. Pierces armor. It's going to be good. Just regular ammo for my pistol, my machine pistol. I got my mini grenades, which I talked about. An auto picker, which helps you pick locks. By itself, not a big help. It just kind of helps your limit for picking locks, which is not great. But if it's wirelessly enabled, it can download like millions upon millions of like schematics for mechanical locks, and so it actually gives you a bonus to your dice roll. So of course, everything wirelessly enabled. Transys Avalon, this is your comlink. This is basically your phone. I don't think I actually need this because I have my cyber deck, which the cyber deck does every function that I need. Like, I can access everything just basically through my eyes because I have this in my head. But I still want a cyber deck or a comlink just because that's expected. It is what it is. The sim module hot. I don't actually need this. I can just remove that because my cyber deck already comes with it. The sim module basically lets you interact with virtual reality and actually like feel it and taste it and smell everything and so on and so forth. Sneak and Hammer are 2 hacking programs. I won't really go into hacking because I need to re-look over all of it. It's really complicated. So I spent $123,000 on this cyber deck. It can only hold 2 active programs at one time. It's really bullshit. Rope for my grapple gun, so I can be like Batman. A gas mask, because you never know. I do have gas grenades and smoke grenades, blah, blah, blah. And then Gecko tape gloves. And if I can take just a few more minutes to explain these, you'll be happy about it. 449. I like that this character builder gives text, gives page references. It really helps. Okay. Gecko tape gloves. I'll read this for you. The outer layer of these gloves is made of a special dry adhesive that incorporates millions of fine microscopic hairs that bond to other surfaces. Individually, these bonding forces are tiny, but combined, they're strong enough to attach a troll upside down to the ceiling. Gecko tape gloves come as a set that includes gloves, knee pads, and slip-on soles. You get to use assisted climbing when you're wearing the set. Gecko tape gloves are useless when they're wet. Wireless. The adhesive outer layer can be temporarily neutralized with a wireless signal, used for getting the gloves on and off without getting them stuck to yourself or each other. So yeah, really cool, because they basically let you do some kind of Mission Impossible shit where you just get to scale buildings. But I could also use them as just like a super adhesive for other means if I get creative. And the beautiful thing is, wirelessly you can disable them at any time. So I could come up with some cool stuff for my own ones and wirelessly disable them or whatever. But also, if I see other people using them, hackable. Wonderful. Love the future. Okay, so that's all the kind of gear I have. Not anything too crazy. But most of my money went towards the cyber deck and my sniper rifle and stuff. So there you have it. And then finally, my motorcycle, because Gug is, of course, a biker. So he's got a Suzuki Mirage, which is not really it's not really a hog. It's a racing bike, but it's the future, man. He can't be seen on that shit. So he's got his racing bike, which has a morphine license plate. It's forbidden as shit, but damn, is it cool. And this comes from a supplement, which I'm not going to bring up right now. But yeah, it does exactly what you think it does. The license plate changes whenever you want to a different one entirely. Not entirely unlike from like the transporter. And we all know how useful it was there. So yeah, I need a morphing license plate. Now, you want to hear something really cool. Chameleon coating. Chameleon coating, it's like it's like arrays across the entire vehicle, and you can get this on basically any vehicle. And they change however you want. You wirelessly designate how you want it to look. So you could use it to just blend in. If you like park it next to a hedge or something, you could just change so it just blends in completely with the hedge. It doesn't look like it's even there. You can also change it to look like anything you want. You could change it from blue to white, which could help if you're trying to evade somebody. It's like, oh well, you know, that van, the van we're looking for is red, and that one's blue. You know, that's not what they would actually say, but you get the point. You can also use it to look like any vehicle. If I wanted my bike to look like a police motorcycle, chameleon coating could help me out with that. Problem is, it costs $10,000, so it's a bit much. And I don't know. I need to find out what motorcycles the cops actually use, if any. And we may put chameleon coating on like our group vehicle or something like that. We'll probably put it on for that, just for how useful it is with the morphing license plate. That's pretty handy for getting out of places. But yeah, I have my own motorcycle. All right, and so yeah, that's pretty much character creation. I still have more work to do. You have to come up with some contacts for people that you know in the business or whatever that can help you out at certain times, and there's connection and loyalty and blah blah blah. And I have $9,000 left over. I may buy some other things here and there, but man, I gotta tell you, as far as character creation, I don't think any system, except for maybe like GURPS, compares to Shadowrun. Just as far as like, and I guess I haven't experienced many systems, but coming up with shit and buying shit and all this, it's so good. It's so good. I can't, especially with all the supplements they have now, like the run and gun shit. It's like another 300 pages or whatever. It's so cool. Like the people that write this stuff must just have a field day coming up with all this stuff. It's so cool. Like I said, we spent 3 hours and we were just laughing the whole time about all the crazy stuff we can do. Like if you want to just buy a gallon of industrial lubricant, there's a supplement out there that'll tell you how much it costs. It's great. It's great. So yeah, as far as the actual campaign, we don't have a whole lot of details at this point. We know that we're all going to be a team from the start. We're all going to have worked together in the past. We are a cohesive team. We're not robbing gas stations. We're not knocking off anything like that. We're a step above that. We are, I don't know if we would actually be counted as Shadowrunners at this point, because I don't think we've done any sort of corporate stuff or anything like that. Like, I think we've kind of done maybe like a warehouse or something. Like maybe not even like one of the huge mega corporation warehouses, but one of the smaller subsidiaries or something like that. We hit one of their warehouses and we got a bunch of goods and we laundered it, and that's kind of where we got to this point. I could afford a better cyber deck and this much better sniper rifle and stuff like that. So that's where we're at, but we want to take it to the next level. We feel like we're ready to work for maybe one of the mega corporations and do some serious work, make a name for ourselves in the Shadowrun community. We'll see how it goes. It'll probably be a disaster, but that's what it's all about. So yeah, it'll be interesting. If you're curious about Shadowrun or interested in all the stuff that I've told you, I highly recommend checking out Spoonie's Counter Monkey videos on the Shadowrun subject. I believe his very first Counter Monkey is about Shadowrun, about the squirt gun wars that he was involved in. Fantastic story. Very memorable stuff. Very entertaining. And yeah, Shadowrun, very cool. We'll see how it goes next week with our first real job. Yeah. So, my name is Mang. It's been Mangging for our upcoming Shadowrun campaign. and I'll see you fine folks next week.